I would like to welcome all of the participants attending today's webinar on behalf of ChemADVISOR. The goal of today's talk is to highlight important aspects on the polymer registration requirements in North America, Europe and Asia. That being said, I will start with a short introduction on the monomer-polymer relationship, then move on to polymer registration in the listed countries, and finally, I would like to touch upon our advice on registering polymers for sale in multiple regions of the world. But before getting started, why another webinar about polymers? Well, if we take into consideration that China is the world leader in plastic production and that the low production costs have triggered investments in the plastic industry, or that renewable chemicals and bio-based processes also became part of strategic plans at large chemical companies, we can say for sure that with these improving economic prospects, chemical output growth should continue to accelerate in the next years, especially in the polymer industry. ChemADVISOR staff have backgrounds in toxicology, biological sciences, chemistry, and experience in applicable regulations and standards. As part of a market readiness assessment, my colleagues will guide you through the regulatory requirements for legal sale for industrial or consumer applications, even in countries where English is not an option. Polymers, as we all know, are made by polymerizing monomers into macromolecular chains. Now, besides these monomers, other substances are often needed for the polymerization reaction to occur. Like, for example, initiators, and depending on the manufacturing process, solvents may also be used. Further additives may be used to modify the properties of the parent polymer, including stabilizers, plasticizers, flame retardants, pigments, fillers, and so on. Polymerization reactions are rarely 100% complete, and therefore unreacted monomers and other reaction impurities may be found in the polymer, including oligomers, low molecular weight polymer fragments, polymerization solvents, a wide range of plastic additives, etc. All these components are usually of low molecular weight, and therefore they might migrate from a plastic product or a finished article into air, water, or another contact media such as food, which may be hazardous for human health and the environment and also can affect polymer properties. Now, the daily use of polymers increases their importance, and the governments and organizations are under demand to regulate them, but in the same time to not inhibit their innovation. Now, let's see how this is done. First of all, the OECD definition of a polymer has been widely adopted by the regulations of many countries, and it says that a polymer is a chemical compound composed of more than one monomer repeating series and has its own molecular distribution. At least 3 monomer units form a covalent bond with a minimum of 1 monomer unit, and the content of the resulting molecules should be more than 50%. Also, the weight percentage of the molecules having the same molecular weight shall not exceed 50%. However, attention, in Japan, monomer with concentration below 1% is not regarded as one component of the polymer, and Japan additionally requires a molar mass of greater or equal than 1000 Daltons. In EU, China and Korea, the concentration limit for a starting monomer is 2%, also known as the 2% rule. Now, we all like exemptions because they reduce or eliminate the need for regulatory review for substances where there is no concern, encouraging at the same time a focus on the substances of concern. Polymers are divided into 2 groups: polymers of low concern, PLCs, and non-polymers of low concern, non-PLCs. PLCs have reduced regulatory requirements, because their high molecular weight is less likely to cross biological membranes and cause harm. Also, they have insignificant environmental impact. The concept of PLC has been globally adopted except in the EU. Even if the criteria for PLC is different from country to country, these polymers are either exempt from notification or can be notified with reduced data requirements, as it is the case for US and Canada. Of course, new polymers that don't fall into the PLC category shall be notified as a regular new substance. So, when comparing the parameters used in this layout table, parameters used on classifying the PLCs, we can notice that the common points are the number average molecular weight, the content of oligomers, the presence or the absence of specific reactive functional groups, solubility, stability, etc. What else can be exempt from registration? For EU, as expected, if we have less than 2% of monomer in polymer, and the amount of monomer in the polymer is less than 1 ton per year, then it can be exempted from registration. The exemption applies also to recycled and naturally occurring polymer. For US and Canada, the exemption applies to those substances that meet the definition of a polymer. China REACH doesn't have any exemptions for polymer. However, a simplified notification under special conditions may be submitted, but we'll talk about it in a further slide. In Korea, the polymers exempted under the old regulation, TCCA, will be considered exempted under K-REACH, but only those who obtained an exemption certificate by 2014. For those that are not eligible for an exemption under K-REACH, their registration is required by, attention, 31st of December 2017. For Japan, besides the 2 inventory exemption rules, the greater than 98 and greater than 99% rule, it also has special cases which can lower the need for notification. The research and development polymers often benefit from exemptions or reduced requirements because they are manufactured or imported in small volumes and are mostly site-contained, which means a low exposure. In USA, all R&D polymers are exempt from registration, while, for example, in Japan, they must be manufactured or imported at less than 1 ton per year to be exempted. In Canada, R&D polymers benefit from reduced requirements. Let's see some aspects of the polymer registration, and we'll start with the United States, where the main regulation for polymers is the Toxic Substances Control Act, TSCA. Now, TSCA in Section 5 stipulates that for companies intending to manufacture or import a new chemical substance in the US for commercial purposes, a pre-manufacturing notice must be submitted to the US Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, at least 90 days before manufacturing, importing, processing, or selling this specific new chemical substance. Only manufacturer or importers can file a PMN, not a processor nor a distributor. Polymers not listed on the TSCA inventory can still enter the US market without a PMN submission if all the polymer exemption criteria were well met. Now let's take the following example. So we have a monomer B in a polymer that is not on the inventory list and is used at less than or equal to 2%. Is the polymer eligible for exemption? Well, a polymer containing a non-inventory listed monomer at less than or equal to 2% may be eligible for polymer exemption if the monomer does not introduce into the polymer elements, properties, or functional groups that would render the polymer ineligible for the exemption. So we would have to take a closer look at this situation and analyze it. ChemADVISOR can help you with the polymer registration in the United States through various steps. We can confirm that your substance meets the OECD definition of a polymer. We can assist you in confirming that your substance is listed on either the public or private inventory. We can evaluate your substance to confirm it if the exemption criteria are met, and also we can create compliance plan if a TSCA PMN must be submitted. So keep that in mind. In Canada, polymers appear on the main inventory, the domestic substances list. Once a polymer is listed on the DSL, it can be manufactured or imported without notification unless it is flagged for reporting of new uses. Also in Canada, we have a non-domestic substances list. Once a polymer is listed on the US TSCA inventory, after 1 year it is eligible for listing on the NDSL. Now, it is crucial that notifiers determine whether the substance to be imported or manufactured in Canada is listed on the DSL or on the NDSL. Substances not appearing on the DSL are considered to be new to Canada and are subject to notification. Substances listed on the NDSL are subject to notification, but with reduced information requirements. Monomers are treated as individual substances under the regulations and may require separate notification. A new polymer whose monomers are listed on the DSL or the NDSL is subject to less requirements according to Canada legislation. Now, how one identifies the required notification information for Canada? Well, the regulations here are organized into schedules which have data requirements for notifying new substances, including polymers. The schedule required for a substance depends on the type of substance involved and the annual amount of substance intended to be manufactured in or imported into Canada. Polymers for R&D manufactured or imported in quantities of more than 10 tons per year are required to go through a Schedule 3 notification, where the notifiers will submit only test data in their possession. Schedule 9, on the other hand, requires molecular weight and no toxicology data. Non-RRR polymers, which are basically PLCs with reduced regulatory requirements, are going to schedules 10 or 11 depending on volume and depending also on the DSL and DSL status of polymer. It's worth keeping in mind that physical property and toxicology data requirements increase with higher schedules. ChemADVISOR can confirm that your substance meets the OECD definition of a polymer while evaluating the DSL and NDSL status of a new chemical substance. We can also assist in providing the new substance's notification or create a compliance plan. I'll move further to China, where the main regulation affecting polymers is the measures on environmental administration of new chemical substances, also known as China REACH, which came into force in October 2010. Under China REACH, any polymer that is not listed on the inventory of existing chemical substances produced or imported in China will be regarded as a new chemical substance. This inventory covers all monomers and all reactants containing combined form, including those present at less than 2%. Now, the regulation says that notifiers must be direct exporters or importers when a new substance is imported into China, but a manufacturer based outside China can appoint a local agent. Let's take an example. If a company in the US produces a new substance and sells it to a Japanese distributor, who then exports the substance to China, well, the Japanese distributor or the Chinese importer must notify the new substance even if the US company has already notified the new substance and got a certificate. This is very different from the substance registration requirements of the EU REACH regulation. In China, we have 3 types of notification. For the non-exempt new polymers manufactured or imported in quantities of 1 ton per year, we have to use the typical notification. China REACH doesn't have exemptions for polymers. However, a simplified notification under special conditions may be submitted if the polymer meets one of the following conditions. All monomers are listed on the inventory of existing chemical substances produced or imported in China. The weight content of new monomer is less than or equal to 2%. The polymer is a polymer of low concern. The simplified notification under the special conditions requires much less data and documents than a regular notification. Why this notification is under special conditions? Just because there are no requirements for local ecotoxicity testing. ChemADVISOR can assist you through the whole process, as required documents and communication are in Chinese, and we can also assist you with confidentiality issues. Let's move on to Korea, where polymers are regulated by the Act on Registration and Evaluation of Chemical Substances, shortly known as AREC or K-REACH, which kicked in on the 1st of January 2015. Now, this regulation changed a lot compared to the previous version called the Toxic Chemical Control Act, as it was easier to get an exemption under TCCA. As I said before, registration exemptions under the TCCA will still maintain under K-REACH. PLCs are exempted, but they require confirmation of registration exemptions. For intermediates and polymers that do not qualify for confirmation of registration exemptions, K-REACH also offers reduced data requirements. For new polymers in quantities of 100 to 1000 tons per year, the data requirement is the same as for regular new substances ranging from 1 to 10 tons per year. If, for example, a group of importers want to register for the total volume instead of registering separately, it is possible via an only representative. However, if a new importer appears, he is required to undergo a separate registration. An important thing is that there is no confidential inventory, only non-hazardous substances can be claimed confidential. ChemADVISOR can assist you with the only representative issue and can also assist you in the consultation for confirmation of registration exemption and with the joint submission of existing substance registration. Let's move on to Japan, where polymers are mainly regulated by the Chemical Substances Control Law, CSCL, which in Japan entered into force completely from April 2011 and concerns the polymer quantities exceeding 1 ton per year. CSCL was conceived in order to prevent environmental pollution of persistent and toxic chemicals. Polymers which are produced from only existing monomers shall be notified if that polymer itself is not listed on the Japanese existing and new chemical substances inventory. Japanese manufacturers, importers, and foreign companies shall submit new chemical notification to 3 authorities to obtain approval notice from the governments before manufacturing or importing new polymers. Now, these 3 authorities have appointed National Institute of Technology and Evaluation as the main body to evaluate new substance notifications under CSCL. Another law in Japan is the Industrial Safety and Health Law, which regulates chemicals used in the workplace with the purpose of preventing workers from exposure to carcinogens and other harmful chemicals. But staying on the topic of this webinar, the Industrial Safety and Health Law regulates mainly new polymers and deals only with domestic manufacturers or importers. There are two types of notification under this law: a standard notification and a small volume notification. However, the following polymers are not deemed as new substances under the Industrial Safety and Health Law and thus will be exempt from notification. Also in Japan, there is no confidential inventory. To better understand the 98-99% rule mentioned in a previous slide on exemptions in Japan, let's consider the following. For a copolymer obtained from monomer A, B, and C, when the sum of the weight percentage of A and B in the copolymer exceeds 99%, and we know that copolymer of A and B is an existing chemical substance, then the polymer formed from A, B, and C is not treated as a new chemical substance, even if C is a new substance. ChemADVISOR can evaluate your substance to confirm if you have a new chemical substance or if exemption criteria are met. We can assist you in the dossier preparation and submission of new substance notification under both Japanese laws, and we can also facilitate any communication with the authorities regarding submission. Moving forward to our next country, the main chemical legislation regulating polymers in the EU is REACH regulation and CLP regulation. All polymers are exempt from registration and evaluation under REACH, but Article 6.3 of the REACH directive specifies that any manufacturer or importer of a polymer shall submit a registration for the monomer substance or any other substance that has not already been registered if both the following conditions are met. The polymer consists of 2% or more of such monomer substance or other substances in the form of monomeric units and chemically bond substances. Also, the total quantity of such monomer substance or other substances makes up to 1 ton per year or more. Non-EU manufacturers of polymers may submit a registration to ECHA via a REACH-only representative. Now, any monomer is by definition an intermediate. Nonetheless, the specific provisions for the registration of intermediates under REACH do not apply to monomers. As I mentioned in previous slides, a polymer can contain stabilizers and impurities, which under REACH don't have to be registered separately. However, this doesn't apply to those substances added to improve the polymer's performance. If other additives have been added for this purpose, for example flame retardants, those additives shall be registered separately if the concentration of such additives is above 2% and the annual quantity of such additives is above 1 ton per year. Let's take the following example where we have two polymers A and B that share the same monomer C at the same concentration of more than 2% and see if we need to register the monomer or not. For copolymer A and B together, we know that monomer C is less than 1 ton per year for polymer A, but greater than 1 ton per year for polymer A and B. Now, if the monomer is more than 2% and more than 1 ton per year in the case of polymer A and B, it has to be considered for registration. ChemADVISOR can assist you with the submission documentation for new polymer registration, can assist you with the only representative and business service providers issues, and also can help you with registering polymers under CLP. It is time to plan and be proactive for the following deadlines. And we can help you. ChemADVISOR can review the status of your polymer products against the regulations in the countries where you plan to do business to create a global compliance plan, and to create a global compliance audit. We can help you create hazard communication documents for your products, review your product data against the requirements to find data gaps and propose solutions to close those gaps. We can conduct research of published literature to find available information on your polymers, monomers. We can provide technical and/or regulatory support if you find yourself under investigation by the relevant authorities. This being said, I would like to thank you for your attention. And if we have time, we can take questions. Or if you have submitted them during the webinar, I will definitely reply them shortly. Thank you again for your attention.